All right, Acts 13, verse 18. We'll title this, Mind Your Manners. Acts 13, 18. That's something the old people used to say. When I was growing up, an old person would say this. They'd say, boy, mind your manners. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew it meant I wasn't doing something I was supposed to be doing. Or I was supposed to be doing something I didn't do, Manners meant when a woman came in the room. You did learn some things that were called manners. When a woman walks in the room, you stand up, let them have your seat. You open the door for a woman. You say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. There's certain things that are manners. Well, a Christian should have manners. And as you read your Bible, you find out that God is serious about us having manners. And he talks about it. Acts 13, verse 18. And about the time of 40 years, he suffered their manners in the wilderness. God said, I put up with bad manners from you people in the wilderness for 40 years. I'm done with it. Wow. And they did. They had a bunch of bad manners. Well, you would expect that. They've lived around heathen in Egypt. Sure, they picked up some bad manners. We will too. Just by being in this world, hearing all the junk that goes on. I mean, you couldn't even go into a place and get you a bite to eat without hearing all their music. They just force it on you. So you're going to be inundated with bad manners. It's going to take some effort on our part to have some good manners. God says here, my people, Israel, I had to put up with, for 40 years, they had bad manners. Look at Acts 17. Acts 17, verse 30. Acts 17:30. And the times of this ignorance God winked at, but now commandeth all men everywhere to repent. He's not putting up bad manners anymore. Because he hath appointed the day in the which he will judge the world in righteousness by that man whom he hath ordained, whereof he hath given assurance unto all men that he hath raised him from the dead. Said Jesus Christ is proof that you had better repent. Because he lived in flesh, did no sin. Now he's going to be your judge. He said, I turned judgment over to him because he's already proved you can do it, and you didn't do it. Now, no human can do it, but they all want to claim they can. The ones who make it through the judgment are the ones who say, I can't do it. I'll take what you did. Put that on my account. Let me have your books, and we'll swap books. And that's the guy who makes it through. The guy who tries to do it on his own, he's the one who gets judged. Here he's saying that the ignorance that God winked at. What's the ignorance he winked at? Bad manners in the wilderness. In this passage, he's talking about people in Mars Hill not knowing who God is. He said God winked at that for a while, let you live according to conscience, but not anymore. Now Jesus Christ has been here. He's raised him from the dead. You're going to have to answer to him. Go ahead.
What does it mean when it says he winked?
Winked at. He let it slide. He let it slide. Okay, so that's our introduction to manners. Now let's get into it. God himself has good manners. You would expect that from God. And he does have good manners. Part of manners is being gracious. That is, being thoughtful of someone other than you. Okay, that's God. He's got very good manners. Because some of us, all of us, shouldn't be here. It's because he's got such good manners that we're still breathing. Look at it in Genesis 18:25. Genesis 18:25. This is Abraham. He says, that be far from thee, he's talking to God, to do after this manner. Okay, here's a certain manner that's not God. These aren't God's manners. To slay the righteous with the wicked. So just because you get mad doesn't mean you're going to take it out on people that don't deserve it. You're going to identify the person who deserves it, and that's who you punish. And that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? He will. He's got good manners. So we should too. We should have some good manners. Leviticus 20, verse 23. If you don't want to have good manners just because God has good manners, he'll give you a little encouragement why you need to have good manners. The manners of the heathen make God mad. So you've either got God's manners or you got manners that make you mad. I always say you can do something one of two ways. You can do it the wrong way or you can do it my way. That's kind of our choices when it comes to manners. You either have God's manners or you have manners that make him mad. Leviticus 20, verse 23. And ye shall not walk in the manners of the nations which I cast out before you, for they committed all these things. Therefore I abhorred them. God says, the things they were doing, their manners were no good. And it was their actions they were taking. So yeah, manners, that fits perfect with our word manners. Your manners, the actions you take, can either make God very mad and he abhor you, or he can say, hey, that's just like me. We got fellowship. I like that. Ephesians 2, verse 3. Ephesians 2, 3. Here's your manners that the devil gives you. Among whom also we all had our conversation, that's your manner of life, in time past in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind. You just do what comes natural to you. That is a manner. It's a manner of humans. It's a manner of the heathen is what it is. And we're by nature the children of wrath. Why? Because those are heathen manners. We've already seen that makes God mad, even as others. Okay, once you get saved, you should have better manners, because you got a great example of what good manners are. There's two types of manners set up through the Bible. 1 Kings 22, verse 20. 1 Kings 22, 20. You've either got righteous manners or you've got wicked manners. There's no middle ground. It's good or bad. This is a scene that's happening in heaven. And the Lord said, who shall persuade Ahab that he may go and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said on this manner, and another said on that manner. Two types of manners. One's going to be straightforward. One's going to be subtle. You know what the one that's subtle is? An evil spirit of lying. A lying spirit. That's evil manners. You find liars. Okay, that's their manner. And there's something about lying. You get caught up in that lying business, it'll become a habit. There's people who just lie habitually and they have no reason to do it. They just do it. It's a manner that takes over. One place to learn acceptable manners is, of course, the Bible.
Amen.
Now, if your parents don't teach it to you with a rod and a staff, then God can teach you through his word. You'll learn. You'll learn the things he likes and the things he doesn't like. And that's from reading the Bible. And you'll start applying that to the people you see around you. 1 Timothy 3, verse 15. 1 Timothy 3:15. Paul says, I've written you a book so you can know something. 1 Timothy 3:15. But if I tarry long, that thou mayest know how thou oughtest behave thyself in the house of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and groundwork of truth, and ground of truth. Okay, so he said a bunch of things in there, but he says, I've written you some information here so you'll know how you ought to behave yourself in the house of God. Now, there are certain ways you should behave. You know those. Now, he said something else. We just identify that as a church. He did not say a church. Where is he supposed to behave in that passage?
In the house of God?
Okay, where is the house of God?
Where we're living in.
Mm-hmm. which is the church of the living God. That's you. The pillar and ground of truth. You are the house of God. And you are truth that the world is supposed to see. He says, I'm writing you a book so you'll know how you should behave so people can see it. They need to see your good manners. So we get from the Bible, manners, how we can portray to the world what good manners are. Look at chapter 3, verse 2. 1 Timothy 3:2. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. That's a whole list of things he's written to Timothy to say, these are good manners. They have a thing, they used to when I was in Memphis, a newspaper article that would come out, Miss Manners, and she would write little articles in the newspaper. Do what? Oh, a book of it? Yeah. Deuteronomy chapter 31. Deuteronomy 31:23. Deuteronomy 31:23. All throughout the Bible, you'll find it's being written to people to explain to them the manners they should have, the manners they should get rid of. And he gave Joshua the son of Nun a charge, and said, Be strong and of a good courage, for thou shalt bring the children of Israel into the land which I swear unto them, and I will be with thee. I thought this was an interesting verse. Good manners that he's expecting of him is to be strong and of good courage. Not because that's a manly thing to do. Why does he want him to be strong and of a good courage? For somebody else. Because you're going to bring these children of Israel into the land. It has nothing to do with you, Joshua. You be strong and of a good courage because I've got people that are going to follow you. Got nothing to do with Joshua. It's all about the people. So we have to be of good courage and be strong, not for ourselves. Because there's going to be many times in life you don't feel strong and you don't feel courageous. And you just got to fake it. Because somebody's going to be watching. Somebody's following. You may not even know who they are. Somebody's looking. But we got to be strong and courageous here. That's good manners, Christian manners. In 1 Chronicles chapter 22. First Chronicles 22:13. Now I know the opposition to the previous verse was Joshua is the leader. Okay, I'm not a leader, so I don't have to be strong. Well, on this one you do. 1 Chronicles 22:13. Then shalt thou prosper if thou takest heed to fulfill the statutes and judgments which the Lord charged Moses, which concerning Israel. Be strong and of good courage, dread not, nor be dismayed. Okay, so that broadens the field out even more. We've got judgments, commandments, and statutes that are in the Word of God that teaches you manners. All of those things that God's given are to give you good manners. If you were to obey the 10 Commandments, you would have some good manners. Now, you're not doing that to get righteousness' sake. Our righteousness is from something way better than that. It's from Jesus Christ, from God Himself, God's righteousness. However, for your conduct, to have good manners, obey the commandments and the statutes. Do the things that God has said are right, and then you'll have good manners. This is a choice that man's got to make. And it's not it's not do it once and then it's always done. No, you got to keep making the choice. In 2 Kings 17:34. 2 Kings 17:34. He says, Unto this day they do after the former manners. He said, these are my people. They know the right manners, but they've reverted back. They're doing according to the former manners. They fear not the Lord, neither do they after their statutes, or after the ordinances, or after the law and commandments which the Lord commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel. He said, I gave them their name, Israel. I gave them statutes, laws, and commandments. And what are they doing? They're down there doing the manners of heathen. So that's what we got to watch out for. Just because you learn some good manners, just because you've identified some, just because maybe for 5 minutes in your life you acted like you had good manners, it doesn't mean you always will. You got to keep brushing up on them. You got to do them on purpose. They don't accidentally happen. Leviticus 18:24. Here's one of the things bad manners does. He says, defile not ye yourselves in any of these things, for in all these the nations are defiled, which I cast out before you. Okay, so how does that translate into language we understand? Okay, so now I'm going to get picky, but I think it's plain. What you should not do is the things that the heathen are doing around you that you don't understand. So, when they don't know how to pronounce English language, and they use a word that's not really a word in place of that word, don't pick up their slang. That's the heathen way of talking. We have a language we use. If you don't know what it is, get a Bible and read it. That tells you how to speak. Okay? Use English language. They've got a whole set of jargon the world uses, and we're supposed to go right along with it. That's how language corrupts. You can view it through all of the different languages throughout history. They always corrupt. They go downhill, not uphill. And they corrupt by man coming in and just being lazy, throwing out slang. Now, the other thing about it is you don't know where that slang came from. You might be cussing in another language and you don't know it. Well, the world's going to be happy with that. They're just fine with it. Other thing they do is they start trends. Okay? If something just popped up, don't get involved in it. Somebody wants to wear their drawers down, down halfway down the back of their leg, then hello, that your pants were not made like that. There's a reason there's belt loops on that. Okay, don't get involved in that garbage. There's a whole wickedness behind that you don't know anything about, and I'm not going to go into it. But there's wickedness involved in the world's trends. He said right here, don't defile yourself in the junk that the heathen are doing. You might not understand everything about it. God's saying you don't have to. You can just look and see who's doing it and stay away from it. You don't have to get involved in that. The question is not what's wrong with it. The question is what's right with it and who that's righteous is doing it. Not just goes to church. That doesn't mean anything anymore. Who that is righteous is doing it. Leviticus 18 verse 30. Therefore shall ye keep mine ordinances, that ye commit not any one of these abominable, what is that word? Customs. So just because everybody's doing it could be very dangerous. There was a whole bunch of people doing a whole bunch of things that were customs. And God said, I kick them out and destroy them for their customs. I know you don't understand it. I don't care. They're the world's customs. You get involved in it, I'll kick you out just like I did them, which were committed before you. And that ye defile not yourselves therein. I am the Lord your God. You want a custom? I'll give you some customs. And he did. We get our customs from a book. They can come follow us. We don't have to follow them. Jeremiah 10, verse 1. Jeremiah 10:1. You want some customs, you want some things to get involved in, you want to learn some good manners, this is where you learn it. Jeremiah 10:1. Hear ye the word of the Lord. Hear ye the word which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. You want to learn some good manners? God will speak it. So open his word, put in the MP3, learn it, hear it, listen to what he has to say. And when he starts speaking, he'll tell you the manners and the customs and the things you should have. Now let's listen to him for a minute. Go on to verse 2. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen. Well, he has just solved our problems right all in the first sentence. And be not dismayed at the signs of heaven. So don't worry about your horoscopes. Don't do any of that garbage that the heathen are doing. They're not going to predict anything. Don't turn on the news channel and get worried about a storm coming. He says that's what the heathen do. They look up at the heaven and say, oh, it's going to rain tomorrow. He says, don't worry about that, for the heathen are dismayed at them. That's what the heathen do. Are you my child or not? Can I take care of you? Okay, am I bigger than that cloud up there? Okay, then you worry about me. Okay, God's correction of bad manners is very painful. That's one reason we don't want to get involved in bad manners. We want to have good manners. If you won't correct your own bad manners, God will do it for you. But you're going to wish he hadn't. Amen. Ezekiel 11, verse 12. Ezekiel 11, verse 12. He says, and ye shall know that I am the Lord, for ye have not walked in my statutes, neither executed my judgments, but have done after the manners of the heathen that are round about you. If you back up there a couple of verses, he says he's going to turn them over to the sword. People are going to come in there and start killing them. Why? Because their manners were bad. Well, that's God correcting the manners. But it's going to be painful. Look at Jeremiah 23. There's 2 chapters you can remember easily. When Jesus Christ was on earth, he laid down the law. And people don't realize he talked like this. But if you want to give somebody a cliff notes of how Jesus spoke when he was on earth, tell them to read Matthew chapter 23. And that's all you scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, whited sepulchres, all that whole chapter. The whole chapter deals with it. This whole chapter deals with the same type thing. And it's Jeremiah 23, same number. Look at verse 10. Jeremiah 23, verse 10. For the land is full of adulterers. That's bad manners. I mean, really, you think about it, it is. Adultery is bad manners. That's not good manners. For because of swearing, you can't control your language. That's bad manners. It's bad manners to use the Lord's name in vain. That's bad manners. It's bad manners to use vulgar language you do not have to use. They shouldn't be used. It's bad manners. Now, it would be one thing if it was just crude. It's not just crude, it's bad manners. He says, the land mourneth. Uh-oh. You mean you're going to have problems from the ground because of that? Yeah. Does the ground commit any iniquity on its own? No. It's dependent on you. When you start doing wickedly, the ground gets contaminated by it. And then it affects you. Your harvest gets cut off. The ground doesn't respond the way it should. What happened when you remember the story of Cain and Abel? Abel gets killed. God says, his blood's crying to me from the ground. And now, Cain, you were a tiller of the ground. The ground's no longer going to yield her strength to you because he's done evil. So the ground recognizes you as the enemy and says, we're not yielding anything to you. So this ground responds to God. America has had a great nation, and we've supplied the world. We've been the suppliers because we've basically been a righteous nation. So God's made our ground respond to righteousness. The more wicked we get, the worse we'll get from nature. And it's not nature, it's God's. Okay, so where do we stop? Swearing, the land mourneth. The pleasant places of the wilderness are dried up, and their course is evil, and their force is not right. For both the prophet and the priest are profane. I don't care if somebody's claiming to be a Christian and they're acting this way. God says, I'm not fooled by it, and I'm not going to say, oh, okay, well, now we'll consider that good manners. Just because you hear a preacher use vulgar language, and I know some that do, and some that have great insight, but they've got vulgar language, that does not suddenly make it good manners. It's still bad manners. Take what you can learn, but don't learn the thing you know is wrong. If there's something wrong, stay away from it. A good person can do something stupid. We don't follow people, we follow God. Okay? Correct. We follow a person as long as they're following God. The second they veer off and they do something stupid that you know in your mind between you and God is not right, well, don't do that, duh. That would make you double stupid. Verse 12. Wherefore their way shall be unto them as slippery ways in the darkness. So they want to do all that. The prophet and the priest want to profane. They want to come into my house and do wickedness. God says, I'll do something for them. I'll make their ways like being in the darkness, slipping on banana peels. That's the way they're going to walk. They shall be driven on and fall therein. For I will bring evil upon them, even the year of their visitation, saith the Lord. Well, if they had just gotten verse 10 right, maybe they could have avoided God sending evil. It's bad enough to get involved in evil because you delved into it. But imagine God behind sending it. Whew. Okay, let's get something happy. Maybe there's something happy in here, surely. Good manners are maintained by vigilant diligence. It requires effort on our part. It doesn't just happen by accident. 1 Corinthians 15:33. 1 Corinthians 15:33. He says, be not deceived. Evil communications corrupt good manners. Evil communications. People who are evil and speak are communicating, and they're evil. Okay, evil communications. Now, that's an extreme. You know, the plainest meaning of that verse is this. If they're communicating evil, it's going to corrupt you. But it goes a step beyond that. Once you accept any communication from an evil person, then it becomes a slippery slope what you will accept from them. It won't be long before you're laughing at something you shouldn't be laughing at. And it won't be long before you're comfortable saying something you wouldn't have said before. It's a slippery slope. That evil communications, make sure your communications are with righteous people, not evil people. Now, I know you could go to an extreme with that too. You have to talk to people. I'm not saying don't talk to somebody who's not. You have to interact with the world. But your chosen communication when you just sit down and you're having a relaxed conversation, that needs to be with somebody that God is comfortable with. He says in 1 Peter 1, verse 17, this will close us out. This is what to remember when you're trying to decide, is this action a good manner or a bad manner? If you call on the Father, who without respect of persons judges according to every man's work. Okay, so right there he's saying God's going to judge you based on the things you do or the things you refuse to do. That's man's work. So because of that, pass the time of your sojourning here in fear. What a way to leave us, huh? I'll tell you, that's real uplifting. But here's the thing to remember. In this life, the actions, if you're questioning in your mind, should I do this or should I not do this? You know, should I have picked that paper up and I just walked by it? I'm just oversimplifying things here, but you know what I mean. It'll apply to you in different ways. When you're trying to decide what manners you should or should not have, the thing to remember is fear. Not fear of man. That's a snare. So what fear is good? Fear of God. The only time you really fear God is when you're standing before him to give account at the judgment. So that's the fear he's talking about. So when you're thinking, okay, would it be good manners to say, hey, stupid, get over here, or to say, yes, sir, I'll go do that, then you can figure that one out real easy. Okay, God, if I'm standing before you at the judgment and you ask me why I said what I said, now what should be the answer I give that would cause the least fear for me? Okay, so take the fear on this side rather than having to face it in eternity, where the consequence is eternal. All right, that's good manners according to the Bible. I told you to be short and sweet. Well, I got half of it right, short.